Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the study of antiquity and the Middle Ages. As always, I am your host, Nick Barksdale, and today we are joined by a very special guest that I'm very pleased to have on this channel. His name is Keenan Booker. Keenan, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you.
He has written a very interesting and fascinating trilogy called Kicked Out of Heaven. And it's going to deal with the history of Europeans from his perspective, and especially in the Middle Ages and the early modern era. He's a fellow history lover just like us, and so I'm really excited to bring up some of the things he writes about in his works and really just kind of have fun. And so for all of you, kick back, enjoy. But before we get started, check out the links in the video description below because it's going to take you to his website. It's going to take you to his books to where you can check them out as well. And feel free to comment your thoughts along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. And so, Mr. Booker, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Keenan Booker. I'm 37 years old currently. I live in Las Vegas. I've traveled across the planet to China and Germany before. I'm self-educated. All the books behind me, are a constant study for me. And that's been over the course of 20 years. I've lived in all the time zones of America. That's about the gist of it, Check out my YouTube channel, The God 720. That's one of my aliases. I also do music. And that's about, how much it goes with me. I write books. I've written 8 books. You can check that out at KeenanBooker.com, where all my material is at. And I love everything. I study everything underneath and above the sun. It's a weird complex with me from the outside looking in because I've had no real mentor or guide. I've had to really figure everything out by myself. So, yeah, that's about it.
And I think that's absolutely awesome. And that just goes to show, so many people like us, in many ways, we don't have a higher education due to life itself or a variety of other things. And so we've taken the time to really dive into books ourselves and try to get the most that we can out of the subjects that we love. I'm sure most of my subscribers can relate to both of us on this. And honestly, I'm really excited to jump into this. When it comes to history, when did you discover your passion for studying history and eventually writing about it?
Like I said, a weird complex, right? So I was engulfed in history since birth. If I go to detail on, when you got your flashbacks in your head, I go to detail. And when it comes to the medieval, I was introduced with the medieval with Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, okay, Oliver Twist, Tale from Two Cities. When I was a child, I was more attracted towards Dracula and Werewolf and the Blob and the Swamp Thing and things of that nature, more so than the R.L. Stine Goosebumps and all of the fictitious stuff that started rolling in. That came in a little bit later, with me. I was already into an attraction zone in that area. And then, my mom had some ancient dolls and cases, had a little Egyptian Cleopatra statue that was around. That, it plays on your psyche, it plays in your subconscious mind, unconscious mind. And then my name is Keenan Booker, which Keenan is Irish for ancient, Booker is Anglo-Saxon for bookmaker. So to be born with birthright over ancient books, right, I'm already acclimated towards, these subjects, and this is where I play. And that's just what the route has been. Another sprinkle to that is I was born on August 2nd, and that is the same birthday as Wes Craven. So yeah, so with Wes Craven, and we already know what he's produced in Hollywood. It made me understand myself on why I can comprehend and handle such material as I've had, is because something on that date allows a person to have a mental capacity to play in that realm and develop art within it, you see? So that's what I've done. And I've always loved history. I'm walking history. My name makes sure of that. I have a birthright over it, so yeah, you know.
And I think that's a very interesting thing because a lot of people are probably sitting there wondering, well, what does horror have to do with history? And that's why you're going to think that if you haven't read his books. And that's because what I like about it, it really focuses on some of the darker aspects of European history. Everything from serial killers to medicinal cannibalism, which honestly, I can't wait to get into these. And so it's a very interesting and different approach to obscure subjects in European history from his perspective. And so we are actually going to jump into that right now, and I hope you are all going to enjoy this. And so, what led you to write your trilogy, Kicked Out of Heaven?
There's a million ways to answer that question. And a lot of the questions that I get asked about this, there's a million ways to answer them. So because I don't do things with, throwing one stone and getting one bird, I got to get 8 birds. There's got to be large reasoning on why I do something. So this material actually started on the last year of the presidency of Obama. There was a lot of police shootings going on. And then at the same time, Game of Thrones started its first season. So I play in both realms, obviously. And I understood that, okay, something else is going on. I wanted to remove the aspect of the racial thought that was being enforced inside of America. And I wanted to find out how Black was objectified in the European mind before physical encountering of, Africans for the slave trade and things of that nature. Was there Black objectification that affected the European psyche in a traumatic format to make them respond to Black or brown coloration? Okay, so understand that when I brought this hypothesis and approach, I erased the fact that Black or brown was attached to a human. I wanted to find the color, and how it affected the psyche in Europe before any contact. That was one of the main lines. Another line that's very important is I don't understand my environment. A lot of Black males overall don't understand this environment, don't understand America. They don't feel included. They don't understand how to include themselves. They don't understand the English language, the bottom line motherboard system that operates spiritually inside words. That's one thing that's not taught to us. So they're basically a dog chasing their tail or in a hamster's wheel. And I could have fell in the same space if I didn't read, if I wasn't, a reader. So I've always been a reader. So I've been able to see things from a sociological perspective. And when you look at things from a sociology, anthropology, or a psychoanalytical perspective, you're on the outside looking in. And invisibly or indirectly, you end up making yourself the doctor, or you end up making yourself the alien, and now the human has become the lab rat. You see what I'm saying? So I wanted to find out what was the birthing of our system, and why our environment is designed the way it is, and why are we interacting with each other the way we are. And then not only that, when you study history or even American history, there was just some weird drop-off. There's some weird drop-off at around 1700, 1600, where everything just goes black. And there's no real detail on what was going on for the day-to-day man. And you have to collect a lot of different information from a lot of different sources in order to do that. And then it brings you to a generalized thought pattern that you have to utilize. And that's why it's 700 to 1700. You see, because to go real detailed is good, but that micro, detail that a person will go in on will miss the macro picture. And in order to really see the macro picture, you also have to have what I want to call an alchemical thought pattern. You have to start looking at social and different ingredients to a magic potion, basically. That's what happened, with the material. And that's what I discovered. That's what's needed, for a common courtesy in today. We don't understand a lot of the natural disasters that is recorded in history. The first chapter in volume 1 goes over 1,000 years of natural disasters that are extreme. I think just that one chapter alone, if it was socially known, we'd have a different way that we approach each other, and the way we communicate and whatnot.
And when it comes to your research and your writing, what perspective do you think that you built over time involving the study of history?
Simplicity, clarity, common courtesy. Okay? This material will make you help grandma walk across the street. There is a passion that is indebted. It's embedded inside your form of thinking now. This material changes your process of thought, and you have to have passion. You have to have love. This information makes you love. It makes you get extremely passionate about the stories that are inside here and the experiences that people went through. And you can tell that the stories are very real because the energy behind the stories, when you hear them, and how you feel when you read it is very thorough. And a lot of this material has been lost in time, or the energy thereof has been lost in time. And now we think that disrespect, hate, and all of these other things are the way we should be socializing with each other. And that's one reason why this popped up out of the blue. If it wasn't me, somebody else was going to do it. Something has to be brought to our picture before we, cannibalize each other, basically. Because, that's the brink we're on right now. And I find it repulsive. So it's very, it's very tied to me. And I needed to be tied to people because it's more so than just being historically literate. It's being literate about human experience. You see, we like to call it history when it's really human experience. And when we understand it as human experience, when you find yourself in history, which usually happens, you get more of a love and appreciation for existence, and, you don't know heaven until you've been through hell, basically. That's basically what it is,
And when it comes to European history and your research that you've done on it, what would you say your favorite aspects are, or what do you love most about European history itself?
One keyword: balance. Okay? I've studied a multitude of civilizations as you have, okay? And this is the first civilization that I found where there was equality of balance in thought on both the dark side and the light side. They knew that they needed each other. When you understand these dynamics in a theological format, you understand that there is no Catholicism without witchcraft, and there is no witchcraft without Catholicism. They're both the yin and yang of the same scenario, and that scenario is human existence. That's what the scenario is. That is divided in between witchcraft, Catholicism. Their unification is life, okay, and death, okay? As you will see images of both on the Catholic side and on the witchcraft side, you see. You see images and the gratification of both, okay? You see the glorification of the babies being born and how babies are idolized in Catholic paintings. You see the lovemaking, it is lovemaking in essence, but you do see orgies and whatnot, and the witchcraft. They're both life principles, you understand. But then they're flip on one side of the same coin. You see what I'm saying? On the other side, both sides of the same coin is what I meant to say. So you do find these other deep scenarios, like, the Spanish Inquisition, or even in the occult serial killer situation with Giles de Reyes, the slaughtering of babies and this and that, and you see a very mixed combination where it makes everything yin and yang on both sides. So when you understand the totality of life, it's positive and negative. But then there's also a negative within inside the positive and a positive within inside the negative. Now, see, when you start getting to these areas of thought, that's where it gets a little bit complex for the standard, and we've lost these areas of thought overall, and they've been brought back intentionally because we need survival. We need maintenance for everything that we built and for the continuation in our progression as humans. And we've lost religion. We've lost the laws of a lot of things, and it's bouncing back at us right now. So that's why everything is coming out. There's a lot of people bringing this stuff out, including you. I mean, there's a lot of historical perspectives and a lot of new archaeology being discovered, and things have to be rewritten.
And so we've covered what you like about European history, European civilizations, their concepts. Now I want to ask the opposite. What do you find the least attractive about European history?
I can't. And there's nothing that I find least of. That's what's so. I support the rage. I support the vigor. You understand? There was a lot of things that was taught to me about passion. A lot of things that were taught to me about drive, desire. A lot of things taught to me about a female's desire, a female's survival rate. I'm a survivalist, brother. I believe in I will sink into the caveman levels of thought where there's nothing to have to survive. You have your hands and that's it. And it was the experiences that I've learned and went through with the medieval that allowed access into many zones of thinking that predate, that are very ancient, and it's very clear on why we've had to do what we've had to do to get to the points that we're at right now. And that includes the medieval, because there was no dark age in between now and the medieval. So everything that we're living of now actually stands right on top of the medieval. The whole thing is that we just want to forget our grandparents because they were dead. And therefore, we have also forgotten the litigations of death. And now we are being reminded worldwide as we see the scenarios that we're being involved in. We've lost our respect for the invisible elements. And it was definitely the medieval and the literature that's composed right here that allowed me to identify the invisible elements like honor, trust. Can you materialize respect for me? You can't do it, can you? You see, you can't show me an object, a material of happiness. These are invisible elements that, as humans, we have a responsibility to understand and conquer, for us to be tied in a progressive form. And we used to have this in the 90s and the 80s. We had way more of this than we do now. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I can't find the least. I have no least. I understand. So, for instance, let's go there. There's detail about the Gardy Lou, and at one time they had to throw waste out the window. That would be considered least. No, I understand and I have respect towards the advancements of plumbing. So that is there. I also have respect and advancement towards medicine. And there is human feces used inside medicine for humans, dated in many ancient civilizations. It was used like that. So it doesn't gross me out, or it doesn't make me say, oh, they were nasty for this and that. No, this is called the early stages of the development to where we're at now, which will make you respect the usage of the toiletries way greater than what you did before. You see what I'm saying? And I mean, so there was no least. I can't say a least. I can't. I love the information. I became medieval, so yeah.
And so we come to an interesting aspect of his studies on European history. And it's something I've actually heard of in the past too, but it was fun to actually see somebody write about it. And that is the topic of medicinal cannibalism in European society. For our audience today, would you walk us through what is medicinal cannibalism?
Medicinal cannibalism, or pharmacopoeia is another word for it, is a practice of using human body parts to heal any type of ailment that you may have. And this is done in more than one way. So this isn't always cannibalism. There's situations of tying maybe a hand to a hand, or tying a finger to you, or something of that nature, or crushing something up of a bone, or crushing a organ up and rubbing it on you as an unguent or an ointment, and yeah, that's the definition of what medicinal cannibalism is.
In your research, how did you first come to discover this topic?
Well, as this topic is loaded in everybody else's brain as well, I can point out the movie The Silence of the Lambs was, yeah. And it wasn't shown as medicinal cannibalism in that film, but it was definitely shown as collegiate or educated, or he definitely was educated in medical in order to conduct the cannibalism that he did inside that film. That was a big kickstart to my inquisitiveness inside the subject. So when I was going through all of the literature, specifically when I was going through a executioner's diary that I was using for the first volume in the criminal justice section, and he described many activities of criminals that were using baby parts and things of that nature. That was that led the door open of cannibalism and what was going on. So once you looked up cannibalism correlated to medieval activity, they're going to throw you into this area first before they throw you into the criminals. So because this area is more verified due to the fact it's supported underneath medical. So I went down that route. I bought a couple of books on it. There's books out there on the subject. And it, like I said earlier, it didn't really freak me out because I ran into this type of information before studying other civilizations. Greece has it, Egypt has it, Rome has it. I'm pretty sure Phoenicia and Sumeria has it as well. So they use body parts to heal themselves. The majority of these body parts are actually mummies from ancient Egypt. So yeah, that's where a lot of the mummies disappeared to from the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. Every pharaoh that died in Egypt had all of his servants mummified with him. All of those servants turned into medicine for old Europe. And a lot of those bodies were used for other things in the alchemical sense. And for the listeners, you have to understand that in the ancient world, or not even the ancient world, anything before 1900 America, there is a combination of a magic thought with medical. Okay, that's worldwide. That's all peoples. That is one way we think we have computed existence. So yeah.
And that's actually a really good point, bringing up Egyptian mummies, because you do have a really good point there. And a lot of people, I had stumbled on this information while studying the Victorian era, and it wasn't uncommon for better-to-do people in Victorian England, for example, to have like mummies or body parts from ancient Egypt on display in their house, the way a lot of, let's say your grandma may have dolls in a cupboard that she likes to show off occasionally, or the porcelain china and stuff like that. And so that's very interesting because a lot of mummies and other artifacts did go missing through a variety of, we can arguably say, legal and illegal forms of looting or buying. And
Yeah.
that's really interesting, actually, because a lot of people don't realize that when they would have people over at their parties, they'd take them to their, almost like their show-off room, like, oh, I've got this, it's from ancient Egypt, or this is from Sumer, or this is from Greece, and so that's really interesting you bring that up. And so we come to another favorite topic of mine, and that is the Inquisition. And so I have some questions to ask you, pun intended, and that is, where did you first learn about the Inquisition in general when it comes to the context of the medieval period?
Okay, that was real good, because that was actually the pre of the pre of the pre to this whole research, okay? I never liked horror movies. I always thought they were disrespectful, Why would anybody sit there and watch another human being get ripped up at the limbs and the throat and whatnot? I saw it to be disrespectful. You're not going to watch that happen to your mate right in front of you and enjoy it. It's not entertainment, So I wanted to find out where were the roots of this stuff. You know, what is this stuff? Where is this coming from? You don't see this stuff on hieroglyphs in the Egyptian walls. You don't see this stuff on Greek walls. You don't see statues of arms. You know, you don't see this stuff. So like no other people had it. Why do we have so much hold on with this type of imagery? And I researched it years ago, like back in 2010 and 11. And the only information available to me online was the Inquisition's torture chamber. No information came up about the municipality. You have to understand that there's many different torture chambers when we're talking about old Europe. So the Inquisition is one of its own with specific vices only for it. And the municipality, which was going on by the city state, was a different witch hunter situation. And there is data that they transferred notes, and sometimes they stood inside others' torture chamber to watch the activities. Now, the big thing about Inquisition that we don't see but is right in front of us is the word question. Right, it's right in there. Inquisition, to be in question. And the original name for torture chamber was to be questioned. You see, there's a lot of hardcore wordplay that goes on inside the torture chamber realms that have very astounding effects with our litigation in court and how we operate today, you know. And I have to say, because of the souls that are in the word, you know, that's the way I look at it, you know. So the Inquisition, they had the Pope's Pair, they had the Jacob's Seat, I think it was. One of the most dynamic torture tools that are noted to this day was made by Christians. It's called the mother-in-law chair. You know which one that one is? Yeah, the one with the spikes on the arms, and yeah, that's called the mother-in-law chair. And they had the Pope's Pair, like I said, which was a thong that they made hot, and then they twisted it open, and they put it inside you, and it's they put it inside you and twisted it open. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. But go ahead, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, it makes me hurt just thinking about it. That's another thing. When you read his books on this, he does go into detail on, like, you know, different torture chambers in medieval Europe in the early modern era, you know, what they were supposed to be used for. And so I find it interesting that your studies on the Inquisition and your writings on it. My next question is involving the Inquisition is more so how we view it today. After studying the Inquisition and various people's thoughts on the subject, do you feel that fiction writers, religious rivals that are going to come up later, like Protestants, and now, of course, in cinema today, like Hollywood, do you feel that they have exaggerated the brutality and violence of the Inquisition?
I'm glad you put it like that, because I'm pretty sure from what you've read that you can feel a lot of this material has been source material for the Hollywood and the Walt Disney. So when it comes to Hollywood and Walt Disney, they will never be able to thoroughly tell you what occurred during the Inquisition. They will never be able to thoroughly tell you the activities of the medieval, like what they did with the Game of Thrones. They confused the line. There's a lot of confusion that you can put inside of a set for movies, where the natural DNA and inclination of the human doesn't work, or it's shut off because it's confused. So I'll show you a 17th century scene, but everybody in that scene is wearing 14th century clothing. So it'll shift off your DNA from what you already know as history, but it's in your subconscious or unconscious zone, and you're not consciously thinking about this stuff. You know, you don't have to use it or anything, but it's in you because you have by blood lived through that time period. So when they confuse it, it's like locking up your DNA, and you don't go down that zone to try and figure anything out. You think you already know what's going on. You know, it messes up the whole picture. There is nothing that is on television that can be historically correct. Nothing. They cannot put anything historically correct on it, because it's either going to spark high level questionnaire in you, and you may go seek answer, and that's not what they want, because that blocks the driving of product. We have to drive you to go to product, you see. So or it's going to put you in a position where you're bright and you've accepted the truth for what it is, and it's connected with you, and now you see a whole new level of, you're seeing through a different color of shades on your glasses now. And they don't want either one of those things to happen. So history will always be distorted when it comes to any form of media lane. And that's how I see it.
And now we're coming to a very interesting subject, and one that definitely doesn't get the attention that it deserves on YouTube and a variety of other platforms, and that is Black saints in medieval Europe. Through studying history, through studying religion, and in other things in general within European history, and especially in the Middle Ages, you talk about in your book these Black saints of medieval Europe. How did this subject first catch your attention?
It caught my attention long time ago. And that was with Saint Maurice of Germany. His painting is iconic. And it will show up if studying other subjects pertaining to history, wars, or anything medieval. When I went down that lane, I wanted to find out what was going on. I knew about the Moors at that time. There was a lot of Moors going on, or that is what Black people were being identified at that time. And they were aligned with the Catholic Church. So I wanted to do some investigation on that, found there were some orders. There's actually orders that are for the saving of Moors that are kidnapped by Islam. There was a lot of kidnapping going on at that time, and there was a lot of, you're a traitor and I'm the honor for this, and knights were in a position where they were basically mercenaries for hire. So there was a lot of that type of stuff going on. And then at that time, race wasn't seen. It was seen but not seen, and your religion identification was more seen before your racial identification was seen. And that's how the sociology was designed. So then I started to go in further, and I saw other saints like Saint Flower, and you got Saint John the Baptist is a Black figurine. You have William Tinsdale, who he's not a saint, but he's the first one to transfer the Bible into English and got hung for it, and he looks like a Black male. You got Prester John from Ethiopia, who supposedly brought the studies of the Coptic Gnostic sciences and Egyptian sciences into Catholicism and into the medieval times. That's also where the word Probestrian comes from, or the word priest. It comes from his name. So then you also got another saint, Saint Flower, who is Black, and Black people like to eat flour. So they like a lot of bread. So, there's also a strong metaphysical line that the Catholicism operates off of that's very attractive as well. But you also have to understand that coloration in Catholicism isn't based upon skin tone. And if that is to be utilized, there's always a double definition to it. So the Black that you see on objects inside the Catholic religion is also talking about the intergalactical intelligence of outer space, which is also Black. So that's what you see with the Black saints, the Black Madonnas, and also the Black archangels, is that double layer of intelligence. It is represented by the people on the planet, and that's also was being represented as that chaotic intelligence, And then that chaotic intelligence is represented by itself by the same color, you see. So
what were your thoughts on a lot of people when they look at Europe, and especially in a less, what they view, less connected world, not as traveled as it is today? Were you shocked to find depictions of Black people in medieval art, especially playing prominent roles like saints?
No, well, yay and nay. I have to say yay and nay. And the reason being is because I understand time. So I've studied other civilizations. You have your Egypt, you have your Greece, you have your Rome, and you will find Black imagery in there as well. So when it comes to the medieval times and what happened when the Moors went in 711, you'll find a lot of Moorish heads or Blackamoor heads and artistry if you're an artifact person. Every real historian is going to review artifact and archaeology, okay? And there is a lot of it when it comes to medieval. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure medieval has more artistry and more artifact than any other civilization left for us to study. They have tons of paintings, they have tons of statues, and there's a lot of Black people in a lot of them. So due to the fact I knew about the Moors and their advancements that they brought to Old Europe during the Dark Age time periods in the early 700, 800, 900, 1000 after the Byzantine Empire, then you will comprehend clearly that there should have been that is in place where it's exactly at. It was supposed to be there. As I stated earlier, race wasn't utilized. It was more utilized of, can I use this as a feat in art? Can I paint a Black person more so than worrying about this being a Black person? You see what I'm saying? Their mind was in a completely different space than how we can compute things today.
And before we leave off with this question, studying medieval history and then we approach the early modern era, we notice a combination of attempts to rewrite history from a European perspective. And you begin to see statues from the ancient world that were once colorful, they get plastered as white. Marble that used to be a certain color gets plastered as white. Would you say that you are surprised that they didn't try to do the same thing with Black depictions in medieval art?
No, this is one thing that bounces back to an earlier question why I didn't find anything detestable with Europeans, because they accepted the rules of life. They accepted the alchemical principles of existence. They, don't get me wrong, there's racism there. I don't know about racism during the time periods. I didn't run into anything that was exclusively direct about a racial issue. That did start showing up in about late 1600s, early 1700s, things of that nature. But before then, in order to conquer and to expand, you cannot approach science in a biased format, nor can you approach alchemy in a biased format. And when it comes to the development of civilization, there is a social alchemy, there's going to be cultural alchemy that has to be controlled, and that's going to be dealing with the intertwining of sexual acts and things of that nature that makes you merge. It's smelting, you see. So they understood those principles and they submitted to those principles. They didn't put in their personal vices towards the goals that we're trying to achieve. So keeping Black as Black is needed because Black, once again, represents intergalactical intelligence. It is a chaotic intergalactical intelligence. You can see that with early America and the African-American inventors, that brought a lot of stuff to the game. It's some chaotic intelligence. Michael Jordan jumping to the rim with the tongue sticking out. It's intergalactical chaos, that is being represented. But that is a part of our existence. Europeans understood that. They embraced it, whether they hid it in the Black Madonnas, the archangels, they hid it up in Moors that they kept as little, altar boys and stuff in the church and things of that nature, man. There Black people were everywhere pretty much in Europe, as they are today. I'm pretty sure there's esquires and things of that nature that are high ranking in a lot of different hierarchy systems throughout the different countries. I'm pretty sure they're still there right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today at the study of antiquity and the Middle Ages. As always, I'm your host, Nick Barksdale, and I hope you enjoyed this. It's a different perspective on history. Some of you may not consider it to be mainstream. Some of you may consider it to be fringe. But what I liked about it the most is that it's his version of history. It's history how he saw it. It's history how he studied it. And like so many of us, he walked away with opinions that may actually be different from mine or yours. And so comment your thoughts in the video descriptions below. Enjoy. And Mr. Booker, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.